This video essay takes us back to the 1920s and the silent cinema of Friedrich Wilhelm Murnau. Praised by many as the genius of cinematic expression, the innovator and artist of his time, Murnau is also remembered for the profound psychological tension embedded into his films. Perez, for instance, argues that the famous Nosferatu is not so much a character as a representation of the fearful world out there. Similarly, in the later films of Murnau, such as The Last Laugh, Faust, or Sunrise, fear and distress also take up a central role, but in these cases, they're often guided or supported by another existential experience, that of humor. As one starts delving into the subtleties of Murnau's oeuvre, one finds a number of carefully constructed scenes intended for the audience's laughter, or, as it will be argued further on, for the comic relief of the otherwise overwhelmingly tense narrative. Murnau's use of comedy goes much further than the unintentional laughs caused by media's aging or the studio's involvement for entertainment value. By looking at two films of Murnau, Faust and Sunrise, we will argue that the use of comedic effects is not only crucial to the overall mood and atmosphere of the movies, but is deliberately there for the sake of balancing out the tense narrative through comic situations and characters, which allow for a certain degree of relief. In the case of Faust, we will look at the construction of Mephisto's character as an evil creature, yet one creating lots of laughs and humor around himself. In Sunrise, the city section itself acts as a comic relief from the tense experience of the previously attempted murder. In both films of Murnau, the existential journey of the characters is addressed seriously, and thus includes humor. Faust was Murnau's last film produced in Germany. It was his own interpretation of the classical legend that is found vastly through literature, theater, music, and films. As reviews from 1927 suggest, the film was received well. To quote, "This fine cinema was adapted from Goethe's original poem, and in the hands of Murnau, the director, a fearless photographer, and a cast of inspired artists, it is formed into the really great picture of the year." Murnau's version of the legend has many similarities with Goethe's play written in the 18th century, and one such similarity is the characterization of Mephisto. In both adaptations, the devil is witty, sarcastic, and funny. Therefore, amidst this dramatic story, in both the film and the play, Mephisto serves as a comic relief of the tense narrative. The comic relief is an element of dramatic and horror stories, found in dramatic plays at least since the Elizabethan era, when Shakespeare, going against the classical form of a play, included such reliefs in Macbeth, Hamlet, Othello, and even Romeo or Juliet. It is by definition a humorous or farcical interlude in a serious literary work or drama, especially a tragedy, intended to relieve the dramatic tension or heighten the emotional impact by means of contrast. The relief usually takes the form of the sarcastic and amusing sidekick of the villain or hero. The sidekick will be making comments on the hero's absurd situation, put the hero in awkward positions, and make inappropriate comments that would usually make a serious character be disregarded or ignored. Sometimes the characters in the story may use the comic relief to make themselves feel confident or to irritate another character. Mephisto is the prime example of comic relief, seen in the form of the sidekick of the lead character. While Faust is suffering and struggling with his choices, morals, and dilemmas, Mephisto is usually finding a way to make fun of him, disregarding his deeper views of life, making sarcastic comments on what Faust wants to do with his power, and putting him in awkward situations to get what he wants from his master. Faust is a character undergoing a deep existential crisis, and this is partly due to the devil's wish to challenge the godliness of earthlings. Mephisto, thus, not only acts as the trigger of all these crises, but also as a relief, a paradoxical character that triggers problems but also makes fun of them. Murnau's Sunrise, on the other hand, tends to explore a matter of comic relief for a certain sense of collective awkwardness and particular discomfort. Though starting off as a rather dramatic plot, with the husband planning his wife's murder so he can run off with a vampy city girl, the film quickly takes a sharp turn in both narrative and tone. After realizing what is happening, the terrified wife runs and jumps on a train, after which Both her and her remorseful husband end up in the middle of the big city. Clearly confused and displaced, the uneasy farmers in the big city serve to emphasize a particular contrast within the plot, while at the same time signifying the stark contrast between the first and middle part of the narrative, triggering a sense of uneasiness among spectators. This so-called fish out of water technique makes for a humorous tone within the dramatic plot, which in turn emphasizes the awkwardness mentioned above. Besides this deeper embedded technique of comedy, Sunrise, being the first American production by Murnau, actually shows a lot of more obvious and physical acts or attempts at comedy. As can be read in contemporaneous reviews, Murnau was partially forced by Fox production company to include these slapstick-like attempts at comedy, making Sunrise stand out from his earlier work. The literal move from Germany to the USA can clearly be seen and sensed in Sunrise, as this picture relates more to the literal sense of comedy that makes use of laughter, rather than having the humorous content appear occasionally in the background. Despite the fact that Murnau's image is usually constructed as that of the serious German filmmaker, humor and comedy more generally are also crucial to Murnau's style, as they provide a contrasting effect to the state of psychological tension, that of comic relief. By manipulating the relationship between the existential and the humorous, Murnau creates movies that have timeless value, addressing that which is the most human in us, both fear and laughter. If we can learn something from Murnau's use of comic relief, it is that every tension, be it a sinful indulgence of Faust or a change in the environment in Sunrise, it is always supported by humor. That which allows to see us past our fears.